goddess behind the cow horns. What kind of goddess could welcome you with music, protect the king like a mother, lead the dead into the next world, and still become dangerous enough to threaten humanity? My God! Amazing! So, her name was Hathor. And no, she was not simply the Egyptian goddess of love. She was far more complicated than that. Let's begin with her name. In English, the standard spelling is Hathor, usually pronounced something like Hathor. Her ancient Egyptian name was written Hathor. It is usually translated as House of Horus. That house was probably not an ordinary building. Egyptologists connect it with Hathor's role as the divine space that contained, protected, or gave birth to Horus, the god of the sky and kingship. Even her written name could include the image of a falcon inside a rectangular enclosure. Horus inside his house. Hathor was already an important goddess during the Old Kingdom, but explaining exactly where she came from is difficult. Images of divine cows and cow-like female figures existed before Hathor was clearly identified by name. That means her imagery may have developed from older Egyptian traditions involving cattle, motherhood, the sky, and royal power. But we should not claim that every prehistoric cow image represents Hathor. The evidence does not allow that. What we can say is that by the Pyramid Age, Hathor was already firmly connected with kingship and the royal family. She appears in Old Kingdom texts and monuments, and women connected with the court could carry titles linked to her worship. Her importance would continue for more than 2,000 years. So why was she connected with a cow? To the Egyptians, a cow could represent motherhood, nourishment, and protection. A cow feeds and guards her calf. Hathor could do the same for the king. Egyptian art sometimes shows her as a complete cow, sometimes as a woman with cow ears, and sometimes as a woman wearing curved horns with a sun disk between them. In several royal scenes, Hathor appears nursing the king. The message is clear. The pharaoh is not only protected by a goddess, he receives divine life and legitimacy from her. She acts as his supernatural mother. But be careful when identifying her. The horned headdress alone is not always enough. In later Egyptian art, Isis could wear the same cow horns and solar disk. That means the inscription and the surrounding scene often tell us whether the figure is Hathor or Isis. Without those clues, confidently naming the goddess can be risky. Hathor also had one of the most distinctive faces in Egyptian art. Her face could be shown from the front, with broad cow ears appearing beside it. That is unusual because Egyptian figures were commonly shown in profile. This frontal image became known as the Hathor emblem. It appeared on mirrors, jewelry, temple objects, musical instruments, and the capitals of columns. At temples such as Dendera, entire columns were crowned with her face. So visitors were not simply walking through a building dedicated to Hathor, they were surrounded by her image. Her most important cult center was Dendera, in Upper Egypt. The large temple visible there today was mainly built during the Ptolemaic and Roman periods, although worship of Hathor at the site was much older. Dendera became one of the great centers of her cult. There she was worshipped as the Lady of Dendera. The surviving temple preserves rituals, festival scenes, astronomical imagery, and many of Hathor's titles. But Hathor was never limited to one city. Her worship spread across Egypt and beyond its borders. At Serabit el-Qadim in Sinai, she was closely connected with the turquoise mining region and carried titles linking her with turquoise. Workers, officials, and expedition members left offerings at her temple there. Why would a goddess connected with kings and the sky also matter to miners? Because Egyptian gods rarely had only one job. Hathor could protect distant expeditions. She could be connected with valuable materials. And turquoise, with its blue-green color, could evoke freshness, life, and beauty. Again, that did not turn Hathor into a simple goddess of gemstones. It shows how her protection traveled with Egyptians into dangerous places. Now we reach the side of Hathor most people know. Love, beauty, music, dance, celebration, sexuality, fertility, joy. These were real parts of her identity. She was closely associated with women and femininity, but she was not worshipped only by women. Men also served her and appealed to her. The British Museum describes her as a popular deity associated with joy, music, and dance, and as one of the state gods ordinary individuals could approach personally. One of her most important objects was the sistrum. A sistrum was a sacred rattle. It had a handle and a frame containing movable metal elements. When shaken, it produced a sharp, rhythmic sound. Musicians and priests used it in temple ritual, especially in worship connected with goddesses such as Hathor. Its sound was not just entertainment. It formed part of ritual performance. Music, movement, and sound could calm a deity, honor her, and invite her presence. Hathor was sometimes called the mistress of music or the lady of jubilation in Egyptian religious traditions. She was not standing quietly at the edge of celebration. She was the divine power inside it. Then came the story that made Hathor one of the most fascinating goddesses in all of ancient Egypt. One day, the sun god Ra looked down at the world and realized something terrible. Humans had turned against him. They no longer respected the god who had created order. Some were even plotting rebellion. Ra called the other gods together. "What should we do?" he asked. The answer was simple: send the Eye of Ra. And in this story, the Eye appeared as Hathor. She descended to earth and began hunting the rebels. The punishment was so fierce that the texts describe the land filled with blood. Soon, Ra realized something. If Hathor kept going, there might not be any humans left. So instead of fighting her, he came up with a trick. He ordered thousands of jars of beer to be brewed. Then the beer was mixed with red ochre until it looked exactly like blood. Before sunrise, the beer was poured across the fields. When Hathor arrived, she saw what looked like a sea of blood. She drank it, and drank, and drank, until she became completely drunk. When she finally woke up, her rage was gone. Humanity had survived. So, where does this story come from? It isn't a modern legend. Egyptologists know it from an ancient Egyptian text that scholars today call the myth of the heavenly cow, or the Book of the Heavenly Cow. The story survives in royal tombs from the New Kingdom, especially in the tombs of pharaohs such as Tutankhamun, Seti I, Ramses II, and several later kings. It wasn't discovered in one complete ancient book. Instead, Egyptologists pieced the story together by studying the inscriptions painted on the walls of these royal tombs. And here's something beautiful. The Egyptians didn't just tell this story, they celebrated it. One of Hathor's great festivals included music, singing, dancing, the sound of sistra, and yes, drinking beer. Not because getting drunk was the goal, but because it reminded people of the day Hathor's terrible anger was transformed back into joy. For the Egyptians, it was a celebration that life had been saved. Does that festival still exist today? No. The ancient religious festival disappeared long ago after the end of the ancient Egyptian religion. Today, people still visit Hathor's magnificent temple at Dendera, but the original ceremonies, processions, music, and rituals are no longer performed. They survive only through archaeology, the inscriptions on temple walls, and the writings left behind by the ancient Egyptians. But Hathor wasn't only connected with life. She also welcomed the dead. If you've ever seen paintings inside Egyptian tombs, you may have noticed something unusual. A beautiful cow emerging from the western mountain. That's Hathor. She isn't there to judge the dead. She isn't there to frighten them. She comes to greet them. Sometimes she offers food, sometimes water, sometimes simply her protection. Because to the Egyptians, the West was where the sun disappeared every evening, and it became closely connected with the land of the dead. That's why Hathor earned another famous title, Lady of the West. For someone beginning the journey into the afterlife, seeing Hathor meant they had reached a place of welcome, not fear. And that's what makes Hathor so extraordinary. Most gods have one role. Hathor had many. She could be a mother, a protector, a musician, a goddess of love, a guardian of minors, a guide for the dead. And when the Eye of Ra demanded it, she could also become the terrifying force that defended cosmic order. Not because she was evil, but because in Egyptian religion, even kindness sometimes had to protect order. So friends, are you okay? If you enjoyed this journey into ancient Egypt, subscribe to Art.Timeline. Every episode is based on Egyptological books, museum collections, and academic research.